All right, all right. We're back. We're back. We're back. Good victory by Michigan State. Still have a lot to clean up. Aiden Childs, very inconsistent today. I tweeted out he's very high risk, but it's a high reward. You know what I mean? He evened out his turnovers this particular week, so I guess you can kind of look at that as maybe somewhat of a positive because obviously last week it was 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and then this week it was 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So he kind of canceled each one of his interceptions out by having, accounting for a passing touchdown. Nick Marsh had a great game, and again, it was interesting to kind of see the dynamic in the switch because last week it just looked at just so lethargic, like everything was just it was just so hard to seem to get some type of offensive performance last week, but then today you have an offensive explosion where you have Glover and you have Marsh who were I don't think Glover recorded a reception last week and Marsh had one catch for 11 yards last week. But for those two guys to combine this particular week and end up with 278 receiving yards combined because Nick Marsh had 194 and Glover had 84, right? So to have two receivers account for 278 receiving yards, that's something that you can build on. Coach Smith made mention of it, in the post game presser, where obviously you want to be much more consistent. The run game, still not where they want it to be, right? Obviously, last week Lynch had the big 63-yard run that kind of over accounted for what the run game actually did, and I think today's combination was a little bit better because Nate Carter was able to get off a little bit more. But obviously, last week they had combined 149 yards, with the majority of that going to Lynch. And then, obviously, like I said, there was a 63-yard run that was in there. So you take away that 63-yard run, and you see what we have. But today it was 105 yards combined. Again, in a day and age where you have single running backs that are getting 100 yards a game, this has to be much better. But I do think that they're probably, again, this is just a second game. This is just a second game under the Jonathan Smith regime. So, but I do see some things that they're going to be able to do. And I think if they can get this running game together, it can take away some of the responsibility that they're putting on Aiden Child's shoulders, right? The play action was there today. Um, the play action was there, which ended up being a lot of the big, the kind of the big time shots. And that's one of the things that is kind of great for coaches that still want to incorporate that type of offense. Where if I'm showing you that I can get positive yards on runs, then you have to start creeping guys up closer to the line of scrimmage. And that's gonna let's go open up the play action pass. And Nick Marsh and Glover, they had great games. Didn't have as many sacks this week. Only had one, had seven last week, but did have 7 tackles for loss. So that is one thing that Michigan State's defense is doing. That's one positive that they are doing. They are making sure that they're tackling players behind the line of scrimmage, which again, that can go a long way because making plays like that puts you in an advantageous situation where you could have a situation where it goes from 2nd and 8 to 3rd and 12, right? So that's always a benefit. Or even if it's 3rd and 6 and it ends up being 3rd and 12. You know what I mean? So it's always good to be able to get some tackles for loss. But the biggest thing that I really can take away from these past 2 weeks, and I'm sure most Michigan State fans, or maybe even all Michigan State fans, can say, is the two things that are hurting Michigan State right now. Where I think if these things were halved, if they were halved, I don't think the FAU or the Maryland game are close. And I'm gonna tell you what those two things are: penalties and turnovers. I'm not penalties and turnovers. Yeah, penalties and turnovers. I said it backwards. I meant to say it because I got it written down. Turnovers and penalties. But yeah, but penalties and turnovers. Michigan State has accounted for 22 penalties for 240 yards in 2 games. Now think about that. Those are 240 free yards that they're giving away. And then on top of giving away 240 yards, we're going to give y'all the ball 5 times on top of that. So the fact that, and again, but they thoroughly outplayed Maryland. Again, if you look at all of the metrics, total yards, rushing yards, passing yards, um, first downs, third down conversions, they outplayed Maryland. So if we were to look at those metrics and take away the turnovers and even take away the penalties, this game is not close. Like seriously, this game is not close whatsoever. They continually shot themselves in the foot again with these turnovers and these penalties. But like I said, kudos to Aiden Childs for being able to cancel out all three of those interceptions. But the penalties, man, they've had double-digit penalties in 2 games, so they have to get that cleaned up. And the penalties again, I mean, I don't know what I don't know. I've never been a coach, right? So I can't say what course of action Coach Smith and the staff should take to kind of minimize these things. But again, you do have to be happy if you're a Michigan State fan, at least early, because again, they haven't gotten into the meat of the schedule. But you have to be somewhat happy right now, especially with the way that the season ended, and then the guys that y'all lost via the portal and guys that just left due to graduation and things like that. But you have to be happy to say, if we look at this, and again, I'm an outsider just looking at this, but you have to be happy to look at this and say, look, man, if we get these two things cleaned up, because I think the win loss total, I think Vegas has Michigan State at 4 wins. And I listened to one of uh, the Valenti show with Rico, and I know they're big time Michigan State fans because they're alum there, right? And they were kind of down on it, but you have to think that if they're able to have these things, they'll win more than 4 games because it's there. Like it's there. Lynch is running the ball hard. Carter's running the ball hard. Receivers are catching the ball. Aiden Childs, and that's another great thing about Aiden Childs, right? And that goes to show like how he's not rattled because. But then again, maybe he's not rattled because it's like, all right, I throw a pick and then I throw a touchdown. Throw a pick, throw a touchdown. Throw a pick, throw a touchdown. But obviously, last week where you had a situation where you threw no touchdowns, you threw 2 interceptions, and then you still have the gunslinger mentality. You still have the mindset that I'm still gonna go out here. The coaching staff have trusted me to throw the ball and to make plays, and I'm going to make good on that. And that's essentially what he did. So kudos to Aiden Childs, kudos to their offense, the offensive coordinator, and kudos to the wide receivers for catching the ball. But like I said, but you have to take it. You have to tip your hat to Michigan State's defense because they were going up against a very high-powered offense. Maryland has a very high-powered offense, and Coach Smith made mention of it. They held Maryland to 86 yards rushing, whereas in the first game they had 248. So that goes to show right there again another positive that you can take away if you're a Michigan State fan. Now, obviously, again, as the schedule gets a little bit tougher, you're going to go against some teams that may run the ball a little bit better. But at least you do have some early indication that, look, we're going to be stingy against the run. And obviously, you have to think that as the season goes on, they're going to get better at this. But I think that's a good mark right there from a team that just ran for 248 last week, and now you held them to 86 this particular week. I think you can take that to the bank, right? Um, they got Prairie View up next. So you would think that this will be the week that this running game is able to come together and you're able to kind of see Jonathan Smith's vision of what he wants from the offense. You would think that this particular week coming up is a week that you see that. You would think this would be a week that you would see or you hope to see that Aiden Child, all right, we're going to cut down on the turnovers. We're not going to self-inflict any things. We're not going to turn the ball over. We're not going to have as many penalties, right? You're hoping to see that, right? Now, whether or not it happens, I don't necessarily know, right? I don't necessarily know. Obviously, Prairie View is obviously lower than FAU. Probably doesn't have as much talent as FAU because FAU is they're a talented team, right? So it wasn't like they just went in to um, play just Helen Keller School of the Blind or something like that, right? They're a talented team, right? They have some good athletes, but you do want to be able to see this game and see that some of the positives that they have built on or started to build in the first two games, that you just slowly see that progression going, going this way, and it doesn't kind of plateau or peak and then start to slowly trend this way. But all in all, man, I think you'll be happy to see, or you want to see, make sure that they do not have any penalties, or will minimize the penalties. Like I say, cut them in half. Just cut them in half. You've had double-digit penalties these past two games, 10 one game, then 12 in the other. So if you cut that down to 5 or 6, I think that helps you out, because you do not want to give away again this many penalty yards. You've essentially given away 100 yards in just penalties the past 2 weeks. So again, cut that in half. Cut it down from 100 something to 50 or 40. Right? Not looking, not obviously. You would love for them to have a penalty free game, like no penalties, but you have to be somewhat realistic in the expectations with the team. So hopefully they can go out and they have a good showing, cut down the penalties, run the game, get going, and the turnovers that they have. Aiden Childs, hold on to the ball, because you have a world of potential. You have a huge arm. You can throw the ball. I love the fact that when he does get outside the pocket and start running the ball, he is looking to get the ball downfield. He's not just looking to be selfish and just try to run the ball. That's not what he's doing, right? So, but again, I think again, like I said, I think Michigan State fans should be happy about this, right? And I think Maryland's going to be a good team as well. I think this is a victory that they can look at. Obviously, it's a conference victory for one, but I think this is a game that Michigan State fans can look at and say, "Hey, look, we beat a team that maybe on paper probably is more talented than we are. Maybe, at least maybe at certain positions, right?" And obviously, a coaching staff that has been together longer, right? So that's another positive that you can take away from this. But all in all, man, I mean, I mean, excuse me, I said it. I felt like Maryland had the advantage in this game, but again, that's why games are played. That's why games are played. So again, after watching this game, and just again, like I said, the game from the metrics of it all was not close. Like Michigan State dominated this game, but like I said, turnovers and penalties kept Maryland in this game, right? But um, I'm just excited to watch and see what they do next week against Prairie View. I think they're gonna have a good showing. Like I said, hopefully they cut down on the turnovers and cut down on the penalties, and they go out and have a thorough victory. You know what I mean? A thorough victory. Because right now, similar to some other teams across the country, Michigan State is trying to figure out, okay, what is the identity? I know Jonathan Smith, he wants to be able to run the ball, but then we have an offensive explosion like this from the passing game. Then it's kind of like, oh, well, do we want to kind of lean into this a little bit more? But at the same time, I'm sure Coach Smith is thinking like, well, shoot, man, if we're able to run the ball a little bit better and get more yards instead of the 100 that we got combined, if we can get about 160, 170, that makes the play action game that much more deadly. You know what I mean? And I think the offensive line is doing a good job, a fairly decent job. And like I said, the defense getting tackles for losses. You know what I mean? Need to get some turnovers though. Need to get some turnovers to kind of again balance, kind of balance this out, right? Because like I said, it's not always going to be a situation where your quarterback is able to throw 3 interceptions, but then also turn around and throw three touchdowns on top of that, or maybe have a fumble. So sometimes the defense has to be able to do the same thing. So I think that's again, but again, you got a lot of things to work on. You know what I mean? But I'm thoroughly somewhat impressed by what Michigan State has been able to do, because I think most people, most pundits will look at it and say, looking at the performance that they had against FAU, there's no way that they stand a chance against Maryland, right? But with that being said, man, man, like, share, subscribe, comment, man. We'll be rocking with this the entire season, man. I'm I feel, I really feel like yes, Michigan State is going to win more than 4 games. I really feel that way, because maybe most people probably thought at best they would probably be these 3 games at best. Most people probably think they'd be 1-2, but they very well have the opportunity to be 3-0, right? So But if Aiden Childs can get these turnovers under control and they can get this run game going, along with the defense that's playing right now, yeah, Michigan State, Jonathan Smith may have a very solid first year here. But with that being said, man, like, share, subscribe, comment. Peace.